15 years, church has been held in this hallowed spot. We are the third group of folks that have inhabited this place. We've been here since Palm Sunday, 1951, and we just celebrated our 80th church anniversary this past March. Come on and give some noise for that. And God willing, in January, I will have served for 20 years as the senior pastor here. And I came out of a Baptist tradition in Ohio and Michigan, and also served in public administration as assistant city manager, a police commissioner, a city manager, a State Department director, and that would all give you the impression that obviously I couldn't keep a job. But that's not really true. I always say to people, the Vancouver folks that are here have heard me say this many times on a Sunday morning when we have guests. If you've never been here before, those who have never been here before, if you'll raise your hands. If you've never been in here before, exactly. Guess what? As a result of your being here, we now want you to recognize whatever holy book you look at, there's a fine print that says you can't go to heaven unless you've been to Vancouver Avenue, First Baptist Church. So we are grateful that you now have a seat in heaven if that's where you want to go from here. We're delighted tonight to host as a part of the role that we come to you tonight in is in the role that I play as the political action director of the NAACP. And we are grateful tonight with the NAACP, the Jewish Federation of Portland, of Imagine Black, of I'm trying to remember the name of the group. Where's Pastor Weisner? What's the name of the group that Tony? Imagine Black was one. The other is Tony, the Coalition of Black Men. Very good. So we're just glad to have you here. I do want you to know that not only is this an historic place because we are now on the national, we received, and you'll see it on the front of the church, the National Historic Preservation Group. I thought you weren't feeling good. Yeah, I just got corrected. Say it again. National Register for Historic Places, the only largely African-American church in Oregon, designated in 2016-17. So we're really grateful for that as well. And the last thing is that right behind me, this pulpit that I preach from every Sunday is the exact same place where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. preached here in November 1961. And I take seriously my job about that legacy of Dr. King and what he tried to do all over the nation and all over the world. And it's just really great to be able to share that with you and to know that at some point we hope that you will come back. Let me give you one quick logistics thing. Men's restroom is right over here to my right and your left. It's in the back. Women's restroom is just out those doors and to the left, and unisex restrooms right here and around the corner, okay? And then as our speakers tonight, which we are grateful, when I think about all 5 of these tremendously gifted Portland citizens, I'm grateful for them running for an office that is so important and to make time to be with us tonight. Will you help me just thank them, all 5 of them, for being here? Really grateful for them. I welcome my brother Bob Hornstein to come up. Oh, and by the way, this is Elder Hennessy. She's the First Lady of our church. She's going to be running time tonight. Amen. So all I can tell you 5, pay attention to her because she's serious. I'm sorry, that's all I'm going to say. Bob will share and then also point out our moderator for this evening. Thank you all for coming. I hope you're happy to be here tonight. For at one point, most of the questions are going to come from the moderator. I'm over here, and I'm going to designate a couple of people. I think, let me just think about this right now. Where's Minister Lakila? Where did she go? Okay, Minister Lakila is going to help me. If you have a question, and we have time to ask your question, then I will get that over here and we will type it up, okay? If we don't have that time, the candidates will be here after we're finished. So there'll be time for you to interact with each of them, okay? Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, first of all, I'm Bob Hornstein. I'm the Chief Community Relations and Public Affairs Officer for the Jewish Federation of Greater Portland. And you know who gets the short straw is whoever has to follow Pastor Matt Hennessy, especially when he told me 10 minutes ago that this is what I would be doing, which is fine. First of all, I want to thank our gracious host, Vancouver Avenue First Baptist Church. What a great setting for this. And I want to thank all of you. It's really important to have an engaged citizenry. We all know how important this election is at the national, state, and local levels. So it's important that we are engaged, that we vote, and that we vote from an informed perspective. I just want to remind everyone, so our co-sponsors, the Jewish Federation of Greater Portland, the NAACP, the other groups, Vancouver Avenue First Baptist Church, we are all 501c3s. So we don't endorse political candidates, but of course, we hold forums like these so that you can be as informed as possible when you go to make your vote count. So with that, I just want to now introduce our moderator, Thanvi Varma, who is a K2 reporter. I met her just because the last year in the Jewish community has been very challenging, as you might imagine. And she has been covering a lot of the issues that are of importance to us, but I know she's also covered a lot of the important issues that are critical to Portlanders. So she's excellent, an excellent choice for coming here and being our moderator. And she's also a law student, I heard, so she's a very busy lady. So we thank her for making the time to be with us. And I think she's got some really important questions to ask. And without further ado, Thanvi, please.
Well, thank you so much. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that really warm introduction. I am so honored to be able to be here and to connect with the candidates and the people who want to know who they're voting for. So I would like to start by laying out the rules for tonight. You will each get 1 minute to respond to each question and 30 seconds for a follow-up. And this is our lovely timekeeper, and she will signal you when you're hitting the 30-second mark, so you know exactly what's going on. With that said, are you guys ready? All right. So we're going to start with individual questions. And Commissioner Renee Gonzalez, I'm going to start with you. The city auditor has just announced that they found you violated campaign finance law by using city funds for Wikipedia edits, despite you telling us at K2 last week that your use of funds was part of the job. Today you met with one of our reporters and you disputed this. You said that you didn't break any campaign finance law. How do you reconcile this for voters?
Well, first of all, I just want to say thanks so much for hosting today and joining us in this very historic election. I consider this place a holy and historic place, so again, thank you for participating. With respect to the auditor's investigation, they found the vast majority of our requested edits were perfectly permissible. They found one that they felt broke the rules. I disagree. The person doing the investigation was deeply conflicted. They didn't disclose the conflicts to us when they started the investigation. It only came up after the fact, and we were profoundly disappointed that they didn't acknowledge that to the public, to us, and to other governmental entities involved in the whole thing. So unfortunately, it was a mammoth waste of time and energy, and we plan to appeal.
Thank you. Now, my next question is for Commissioner Rubio. This question comes from our friends at Univision. What steps would you take to unite the roughly 13% of Latinos who live in Portland, some who feels the city falls short in making them feel at home, some claiming Portland falls short at providing information in Spanish?
I think that's a great question, and I think it's something that Portland has struggled with, and not just the city of Portland, but multiple municipalities have struggled for a long time. I used to be the executive director for Latino Network for 11 years, and this was a constant issue. We were constantly advocating with school districts, with government for multilingual material, but above that, at a minimum, but above that, we need to push for more bilingual and bicultural staff. And not just entry-level staff or staff that are on the front line, but staff also vertically, in decision-making positions, because they will bring that lens to have more holistic availability in multiple languages, and not just Spanish, in multiple languages here represented in Portland.
Thank you, Commissioner. My next question is for you, Mr. Wilson. You often lead with what you say you will not do if elected mayor, saying statements like, if you like the way things are run now, I'm not your guy. Are you leading too much with what you won't do rather than what you will do?
Not at all. Our city is in crisis, and we have to take a deep look at the city. We're letting our neighbors suffer and die on the street, and I want everybody to know that the road ahead next year is going to be difficult, and we have some hard choices, and we're going to have to work together. But letting our neighbors live on the street is not a value that I'm going to bring forward for next year. Antonio is on the corner over here. You see him every day. He's a 45-year-old black fella. I've known him for years. He's been on the street, and we have no place for him to go. Next year is about sheltering our unsheltered so we can care for Portland and get our dignity and decency back for our city.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Now, Commissioner Mapps, my question to you. You've been vocally critical about the Joint Office of Homeless Services, but this year you are campaigning to be mayor, and it's also the year you've taken action towards actually ending the partnership. What do you say to voters who feel like you're taking action now because you want to be mayor?
Well, I do want to be mayor. I'll tell you what happened this week. The city of Portland has a partnership with the Joint Office. We said that last week we do an evaluation. The evaluation came back, and frankly, the Joint Office failed in some important ways. One of the things that we said we do in the first 90 days is to clearly define the roles of the city and the county in serving our homeless folks. That didn't happen. The other thing that we said that we do is the county would provide the city of Portland with vouchers to support our folks who currently live in our safe rest villages so that they can, once they heal, they can move into permanent housing. Those vouchers haven't come up either. That's an existential challenge for the city of Portland because our safe rest villages work. What we have to do is actually evaluate the work we do and hold ourselves accountable. And when we see spaces where we can do better, we need to lean in that and do better. Seeing problems and ignoring them is not leadership, and it's certainly not how I will be your next mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now, Ms. Ostis, you talk about being a stripper and an artist and championing the arts as a mayor. What do you say to people who don't think the arts are going to save our city?
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for having me here tonight. So I jumped into the race because I am craving new types of leaders. Certainly, any stripper, any artist contains multitudes. But what strippers are especially gifted at is reaching across the aisle, meeting every single individual where they are, listening, connecting, and inspiring them. That's what I want from this new mayor in this weak mayor system. We're going to have professionals in charge of the bureaus. We're going to have a huge city council, 12 people representing North Portland, Northeast Portland, East Portland for the first time. I want a mayor who can lead with vision, hope, positivity, and an artist's lens. I really think that Portland deserves that, and that to reflect the very best parts of Portland is the job of this new mayor in this new system. And therefore, I've greatly inconvenienced myself to throw my hat in the ring, and am honored to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's shift gears and start talking about the topic of homelessness. So in Portland, according to the point-in-time counts, it's increased by 65% from 2015 to 2023. What has the city done right and what has it done wrong? I'll start with you, Commissioner Gonzalez.
Well, I, as a region, we got really focused on housing first, which is a philosophy and theory that has some benefits, but has been often misinterpreted in our region. So we prioritized building of long-term housing without taking care of focus on shelter. That's a big mistake. We've also been all over the place on enforcement. We're dealing with really tough behavioral health issues on the streets of Portland. It's hard sometimes to get people to accept shelter, regardless of whether that's the right decision for them, particularly when they're suffering from substance use disorder. I think we have to be crystal clear about our commons, that there's no camping allowed. One area that we've done well are safe rest villages and task sites. These combine shelter with services. We're getting tremendous push through into long-term housing, much more successful than congregate shelter. That's a real success for us in the region. So a mixed bag, mostly not working. The biggest decision that Commissioner Mapps and I joined in last week was exiting the Joint Office on Homelessness and starting that process. That was a broken system and a waste of money.
Thank you, Commissioner
Thank you.
Gonzalez. Commissioner Carmen Rubio.
So we do have a lot of challenges here, and the pandemic was a stress test for how well our systems were working or not working, or if they were even there at all. And for a long time, things have organically been going well because we live in such a beautiful place. Until more recent years, things had been going relatively okay in other areas with work to do. But after the pandemic, we really saw where the gaps are. And then that was exacerbated by other pressures and the implementation of Measure 110, rising house prices and housing prices that push people into homelessness sometimes. And so we do have work to do. So what's not going well is that we have to take care of our systems. We need to make sure that we're building them out and they're strong. Things we're doing well is we now know it works. We know shelters with services are what helps people move off the streets and into a situation where they can get the help they need and hopefully on a path to housing.
Thank you, Commissioner. And Mr. Wilson.
Thunby, thank you. So let's be clear, my focus is unsheltered homelessness. So she had talked about, I think it was like 40% increase.
65.
So from that period of time, the unsheltered homeless rate increased 136%. Today, we have 5,398 people living on the streets of Portland. That is what I'm critically focused on addressing. We also I founded Shelter Portland. The goal of that was to end unsheltered homelessness, and we started researching what do other cities do and that we're not doing. And we found out that we closed all of our nighttime shelters in 2016. It was a political decision. When we closed that, we focused on housing first, and we let our neighbors start to live on the street, and we see that explosion that we're experiencing today. The group of experts that I have and we worked on is we started opening shelters this last couple years in Portland. As we gained funding, we started opening to test, and now we have a shelter strategy that is 1/10 of what the city is currently spending. Next year, we're going to open up enough shelters to care for every person in Portland and end unsheltered homelessness.
Commissioner Mapps.
Thanks for the question. It's a mixed bag. I'll tell you, in the context of what the city's responsible for, some good news. Our Safe Rest Village system is a success. We stood up during my time on council more than 555 beds in little tiny house village pods. We're moving people from the sidewalks into those Safe Rest villages. And what we're finding is when people have a safe place to stay and they stabilize over about 3 months, they're kind of ready to move on to more supportive housing. Now, here are several things we're doing wrong. We have failed to get housing vouchers for our Safe Rest Village clients from the county. That was part of the plan. Frankly, this whole system collapses unless we get that throughput. Another thing which we very much failed at is we failed to bring on new housing. For those of you who are paying attention to the numbers, basically the creation of new multifamily housing in the city of Portland has functionally fallen off to about 1,000 a year. We need about 6,000. And finally, one of the things I think we've really failed at is to hold people accountable for their behavior. Being homeless is not a crime. However, being homeless is not a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Ms. Ossis.
Thank you very much. I believe if you're homeless, you have no business anywhere close to a jail. That's one of the reasons I'm in the race, too. So what PDX Portland has done right, we have massively funded these measures. We have put so much into anti-homelessness services, but those monies are not getting down to the people who really need them. I also think we're doing a lot of research, finding which services are most effective for the best price point, and absolutely jail is not that. Jail is the most expensive of those services. What we're getting wrong, we are not coordinating services, and I think the Joint Office of Homeless Services, there's an instance of coordination that was not really happening but needs to happen better. We shouldn't just bail. We need to coordinate, I think, from the state down. State, local, county, all these services need to work together so that the monies can access the people who are suffering and not be just siloed at the top. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'm going to start with Commissioner Rubio now. On our next question is about accepting services. In our extensive coverage of homelessness, one key reason people don't accept services is a lack of trust. How do you plan to build trust, and especially amongst people of color?
That's a great question, and trust starts with having the ability to have the cultural humility, to have the ability to meet people where they're at. And that's why we need to focus on investing in our workforce so that we have workers who are trauma informed and know how to work with populations that are suffering different kinds of challenges. In particularly, we need culturally specific services and services that are really tailored to meet people where they're at. We also have found that in terms of services, and when talking about certain populations who are living on the street, that they are more likely to go into shelter when they have some of their needs met. And we call them the 3 Ps, and that's privacy, when they have privacy so that they have their dignity, possessions, and also their pets. And pets are a big deal because that's, for some of these folks, it is their family. So respecting the dignity and the humanity of people that are vulnerable is part of the equation.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Wilson?
As far as those that are service resistant, so we have this perception that people won't accept help and we're going to be leaving them on the street. The reality is we don't have any shelter. I ride with police officers all the time. We happen upon unsheltered souls, and we have no resources to provide them. We have to have resources available at night and during the day so we can gain that trust. And then we need to enforce our community safety laws. No camping, no RVs, no tents, no tarps, no boats. Right now, because we don't have that resource, that access, we've lost our bearing here in Portland. Provide basic nighttime shelter, day shelters for services, and then enforce your code so everybody knows that that is the community standard, where we're not going to leave people on the street in Portland.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Commissioner Mapps?
I think you're going to hear a broad consensus in this room around how to serve folks who are service resistant, especially folks from the BIPOC community. Commissioner Rubio is correct. We need to provide culturally appropriate services. Frankly, we've done that with our BIPOC Safe Rest Village. We're seeing great results there. One of the things I very much want to do is to make sure that we can connect that village with the housing vouchers that come out of the county. I also will concede that I think Commissioner Rubio's emphasis on having private spaces, being able to hold on to your possessions, and being able to hold on to your pets is one of the things that helps move people from the streets to the sidewalks, from the sidewalks into shelter. I'll push back a little bit on one of the things that my friend Keith said. You know, we've been managing, or at least I've been on council for 4 years. We've been doing outreach even when we have shelter beds available. One of the things that we find is consistently, I think the number we heard was 40% of the time, folks are not accepting those services. We need to deal with that.
Thank you. Ms. Ostis?
I really appreciate how this question led with trust. I think that's a really important piece that a lot of we don't hear as much in the city level as I would like to. We need to trust that each of these people has the wherewithal to make their own choices. Tents are housing. Tent communities are communities. People, human beings, naturally make communities, and we need to honor that when we provide housing. I think that's critically important, in addition to privacy, possessions, and pets. A locking box, something as simple as a 3-foot by 1-foot locking box where a camp can be stowed so that that person can have a job for the day or to get their medication or to get a doctor's appointment. We've heard that that is critically important, and that just shows the very basic human dignity that we need to honor, that this person has possessions they need and that they have a community that they want to see honored as they move forward into the housing process.
Thank you for that. For this next question, we'll start with Mr.
I think I hadn't answered.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, Commissioner Gonzalez, I'm so sorry.
I'm just going to echo a couple of the pieces you've already heard and then supplement a little bit. One of the things we've seen very successful is some of our street level outreach workers in Portland Street Response and chat that develop relationships with folks on the street. So when their offers of shelter or other services are made, it's with someone and from someone has an established relationship with those on the street. But very, very important. It's also worth emphasizing, we're not dealing with one population on the street. When we talk about homeless and talk about it as one group, we have several groups: substance use disorder, mental illness, economic displacement, white, black, brown, Chinese, all different communities with different needs. And so cultural appropriate, often linguistic specific, is essential for certain communities. Also worth noting, though, the majority of unsheltered homeless in the city of Portland are white males. And so we talk about race, we talk about gender, but still the majority of the folks you see on your street are white males. So it's important to reach people in their own culture, own language, but also not conflate what the issue is.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Sanvi, I'd like to take my 30 seconds and
Of
respond.
course. Go ahead.
I'd like to just clarify with what Mingus just said. Mingus, you said that 40% will not accept shelter?
It varies from time to time, but yes, I'll tell you. Was there a number even embedded in the question?
65% increase in homelessness.
Okay.
That was an increase, but
But
your point,
what we're finding, and I'll tell you, we got Renee, Commissioner Rubio, and I have served on council. I'm the guy in charge of sidewalks. I have a legal obligation from the feds to make sure our sidewalks are clear, so I have to arrange services and ask people to move from the sidewalks to someplace else. And what we find is a significant proportion are not willing to go.
what I'd like to do is on the rebut. So Mingus said that 40% won't accept shelter, but that gives 60% that do. Who wouldn't in this city accept 60% reduction in the unsheltered souls on our street and not consider that a huge victory, allowing us then to take our outreach services to then address the others that are left on the street?
Thank you for that.
Can I clarify one stat?
Yes.
So the Supreme Court case that was just heard, Portland was cited as saying 70% of offers of services were declined by those on the streets, just to calibrate the numbers. So that was what the city submitted in their brief, 70%.
Thank you for that clarification. We'll move on to our next question, Mr. Wilson. The camping ban is a controversial one. As of now, police can technically cite or arrest people for refusing shelter if it's offered to them. However, the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office has declined actually enforcing it and accepting people into jail. Is the path forward camping ban or not?
You have to have a no camping ban. It's been around for decades. But we have to be able to provide shelter first, because if you're just going to arrest and without providing shelter, that's just cruel. I mean, look around where we're at. Within a quarter mile, there's a dozen people on the street, and we know their names. So offer shelter, provide that life-saving care. If they deny and set up a tent, then we're able to say, hey, that's against our law. But right now we have, and we apply the law once or twice a day. There's 5,000 people. It can't be in a Swiss cheese approach. It has to be holistic. We have RVs on our streets. We have tents in every neighborhood. It has to be whole and fully enforced, but we have to have a shelter for every person. Then we enforce the code fully and completely, and we keep our community safety and our standards intact.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Commissioner Maps?
Well, I believe the sheriff is working with us to some degree to help enforce the camping ban. And I will also reassure people that the city is not trying to arrest our way out of homelessness. However, there are certain circumstances and frankly certain individuals who are camping in a particularly inappropriate way where we need to make some sort of intervention. I'll tell you, since I've been on council, I have met with the heads of hospitals who told us, you know, people have pitched their tents literally in front of the door of our hospital, and our clients can't get get in or out. I'm the dad of a 14 and 15-year-old and we live in inner southeast Portland. My kids navigate their own way to school, and we have RVs and tents between my front door and the school that they have to go to. There are rules around that. I think it's completely appropriate for us to enforce those rules.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ms. Ostis?
I would agree that we definitely need to enforce what rules exist practically, but also do not criminalize poverty, do not criminalize addiction, because that destabilizes a vulnerable population further. The cost of living in Portland is too high, period, and that's the 80% indication of falling into houselessness is the cost of living. We need more and various shelters to serve every person, and still there will be these housing resistant people who will refuse to move their tents. So Right to Dream 2 was a wonderful model, in my opinion, where people could camp together and make communities. We need coordinated services, like I said before, to make sure that when somebody does enter a rehabilitation journey, that they are supported through every step of that journey, and that's really lacking right now. I think there's a lot of work we can do, but yes, you cannot pitch a tent in front of a hospital or a school or a church.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Gonzalez?
It's essential that we have broad and clear camping bans in the city enforces them. We have long had a reputation as anything goes in the city of Portland, exacerbated by Measure 110, exacerbated by lack of enforcement. That sends a message across the country that anything goes if we move to the streets of Portland. We need to say hard no on that, because of the element of the homeless that's particularly challenging for us is the migratory homeless that don't come from Portland, that come from other cities across the country. So we need to be a hard no on that. I'm not afraid to say, as a mayor, I'll be one of the strictest, if not the strictest mayors in the West on camping. I do want to add to the discussion here, everyone recognizes the need to build shelter, but we can't wait until there's enough shelter or enough housing to start enforcing our laws. Last piece, the medical illness on our streets is profound. And it's not just going to be addressed with enforcement. It's not just going to be addressed with shelter. We need massive medical intervention for a lot of these folks on our street. And so it's got to be all of the above.
Thank you, Commissioner. So we're going to be switching gears now. I would be remiss if I didn't ask this.
My turn.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. This is the second time I've done that. Yes, Commissioner Rubio.
Okay, really quick. So for me, I truly believe the camping ban only works if we have enough shelter. That's why we need to just do the hard work. We need to stop with the shortcuts. We need to just really focus on rolling up our sleeves and building out the system we should have built out a long time ago. People need somewhere to go when we have to move them along. Also, when they break the rules, we need to enforce the rules. I do support the camping ban that we have on the books right now, because I also do believe it's the right balance of compassion and accountability.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now we will be switching gears. I would be remiss if I did not ask this question, and I'll start with you, Commissioner Mapps, given where we are situated today. Tell us about the impacts of systemic racism in Portland and just one thing you would do to address any facet of it.
Well, no one on this panel tonight knows better than me that racism continues to shape her culture and politics here in Portland today. Frankly, that is one of the reasons why I am running for mayor. I'm in some ways a trailblazer, and I sure hope that I'm an example for folks who follow in my path. I will tell you, if you want to reduce economic and political inequality, one of the things that we need to focus on, and as your mayor I will focus on, is promoting home ownership and promoting education. That's how you shrink that gap between the wealth of African Americans and people of color and the wealth of your average Portlander. I also think that we as a community need to come together in spaces like this and denounce racism and hate wherever it rears its ugly head. And frankly, folks, I can tell you it rears its ugly head in this town every day.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ms. Ostis?
Thank you very much. Oregon has a horrific history of racism, and clearly we're all aware of it. I don't think enough of us truly know the depth of that. So awareness would be a first step, but also just listen to Black leaders, listen to our elders, listen to the stories that they have. I don't think East Portland, North Portland has been listened to in maybe ever. in Portland. And finally, with this new city council, we have 3 representatives from East Portland, 3 representatives from North and Northeast Portland to really center these voices. So that's the first step, listening to them. And as far as East Portland goes, there's a lot of gun violence out there. There's a lot of youth that have very little to do. They lack services. I think the city should be on the hook to open a bowling alley, open some co-ops so that community has healthy places to gather and grow together and to let their voices be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Well, the history is deep and dark. Portland was once home to the largest chapter of the KKK. My Catholic father would often remind his Portland wife of that history in the city of Portland. That involved anti-Semitism, anti-Catholic, anti-Black. That is a part of our history that we have to acknowledge. I think one of the essential components here in respecting a community and addressing these histories is to respect the community, not to speak at it, but to respect its perspectives on things. My friends in the Black community are often the clearest on the importance of safety, the importance of police in their neighborhood. You hear sometimes people who purport to speak on their behalf, and you hear a very different message than actually people in the community. They still embrace spiritual life in a very deep way. You don't often hear that in Portland politics, but you often do hear it in the Black community. And so, last but not least, no community is a monolith. There's never one spokesperson for an entire community, and acknowledging the complexity is important. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rubio.
I absolutely agree with a lot of the things that have been said. We are not monolithic in all our communities of color. We all care about education and the economy. We care about safety. But we do have a responsibility, despite it goes beyond our identity, we do have a responsibility to stand up against racism, to stand up for racial justice, economic justice. That is part of the job as a leader and as a mayor, I believe. And time and again, I just have to say it, I am the only candidate up here who has shown the ability to tackle these issues and protect investments that were hard won by our communities of color and our leaders in this community and produce real results. This is why it's really important that we talk about and preserve investments like Reimagine Oregon, which was $6 million that were just awarded to incredible Black-run businesses in this city that almost went away because of this council.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. So homes only a matter of a few blocks away were taken over and condemned, and the Black homeowners were provided $50. This was just 40, 50 years ago, only a few blocks away from here. Black home ownership is 42%, white home ownership is 72%. There's an initiative called 3 Million by 2030. It's a focus on first-time homeowner for Black residents to get 10-point increase by the year 2030. It's down payment assistance. I'm happy to say that generational wealth is the critical part to building small business wealth. That's how we build back our middle. That's how we help the Black community. And then I want you to know, Kamala Harris is going to be our president, and then she's going to supercharge what I just talked about because she's talking about a $25,000 first-time homeowner investment result. Think about that. A city focused on investing in our Black communities with down payment assistance, along with a $25,000 first-time homeowner, we can supercharge Black homeownership because that's how we build generational wealth.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I didn't miss anybody, did I? No. Great. Okay. So to the next question, and we'll start with you, Ms. Ostis. Let's talk about Dawson Park, which is just down the street. It's now known as the park where over 80 shots were fired and where shootings often happen. But it was once a place where Martin Luther King Jr. visited, and for many, it's still an important community fixture. What are you going to do to address the disproportionate impact that gun violence has on the Black community?
Well, I think I addressed a little bit in my last answer. I think that it's critically important that we connect Black youth with services, with education, with holistic ways to come together. Children in general are kind of forgotten about in our city, but Black youth in it especially. On my way here, I heard that a neighbor was stabbed last night right on this block and killed. Bobby was his name. This park, we need to make sure that the city sees it as a heart of this neighborhood and does whatever it can to make holistic gatherings happen there, connect it with downtown, connect it with East Portland, and make that truly a heart. My campaign leads with vision as as a way to combat violence like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
There's some very targeted pieces that we've deployed in recent years that are having some success. Our Office of Gun Violence, our ceasefire program, and our focused intervention teams in the Portland Police. What the big change here is finding people in the community that prevent the second shooting. The first one's a tragedy. The second and third, the retaliatory that we see so often in gang and gang adjacent communities, is killing us in the Black community. We are having some success there. We're seeing rather dramatic drops in gun violence in the Black community. It's not enough, but that's a big part of it. That's also not over policing. We used to carpet bomb a neighborhood after a shooting. We'd fill the streets with police officers. That was truly how you got over policing. The focused intervention has been much more targeted and much more effective. More broadly, we have to create a path for economic development, for spiritual life, for social fabric inside the Black community. Those are the long-term pieces that are essential to giving people hope and path. And never forget faith. That has a role in it all too. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubio.
So absolutely, feeling safe. Everyone deserves to feel safe in our community, and no matter who you are or where you live. And safety and security is one of the most basic services that any local government provides to its residents. And I think while we know that crime trends are going down right now, the fact is people don't feel safe, and there's disproportionate kinds of violence in different neighborhoods. And so we need to address that gap. And so I am all for really having a new comprehensive look of how we look at our public safety system so that we have the right people in the right roles and expand that definition. Yes, enforcement is a part of it, but it's not the totality of it. We need to look at upstream interventions. We need to look at Office of Violence Prevention, and that's why I'm a big supporter of it, and led an effort to invest $4 million at the start of my term on office to specifically combat violence prevention, which has led to a decrease.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Wilson.
Well, I'm going to talk specifically about Dawson Park. So 2 blocks away, if you notice, there's been new candlesticks brought where there was an open drug market. And there was an open drug market for years. It's just recently that we put the candlesticks up. You might have seen it as you came here. There were 10, 15 people on that corner at all times of night. So if you think that Dawson Park and 80 shots fired is something that's sporadic, well, this is happening often. Columbia Park last Monday, 50 shots fired. This is becoming commonplace because our police are overwhelmed. 2 things. We have 80 unfilled positions. I know Chief Day is working hard at filling those positions, first of all. Second of all, 50% of all the arrests in any given year are unsheltered. We're arresting the same people over and over again. End unsheltered homelessness, take the burden off of your overloaded public safety system, and get back to community policing and providing deterrence in the neighborhoods so we don't have 15 kids on the corner dealing drugs right in the open for all of us to see.
Commissioner Maps.
Dawson Park truly hits home for me. I got a 14-year-old and a 15-year-old. They take basketball camp at that park during the summer. So this scares me to death. And I will also tell you, I was chatting with a member of the audience right before we started today, and she was telling me that she passed through Dawson's Park on her way to this event today, and they got a group of folks out there consuming drugs as we speak. There is a way forward. Number one, I want to praise our good friend, Pastor Hennessy. He has been working closely with the mayor's team in City Hall and our community safety team to develop a plan. One of my goals before this council ends on December 31st is to institutionalize that plan with a resolution so the next council has an obligation to move forward. Things that I want are increased police patrols in the park, more park rangers. I think there's a bus stop that we might want to move. I think I can make some changes to the streets that will prevent drive-bys. I want to make it cheaper to get permits to activate the park. We got to get the drug users and the drug dealers out of the park, and we have to have more events.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, we will start with you, Commissioner Gonzalez, on the next question. Yeah, okay, we're all just making sure I didn't forget someone. So when it comes to staffing, this is a concern that you all have brought before us, and Chief of Police, Chief Bob Day, has also brought about. We need hundreds of more officers to be fully staffed, but officers on the ground tell us that they're scared to be a police officer because of all the anti-police sentiment. How will you bridge this gap and make sure that the city of Portland is fully staffed?
I'm endorsed by the Portland Police Association, Portland firefighters, the 3 DAs in the region. It's because I listen to law enforcement, I think about it every day, and I protect them from sometimes the radical elements in our city that go after them nonstop. Police accountability to civilian oversight is a must in our community. That needs to be there today, it needs to be there tomorrow. But the way sometimes extreme elements have bogarted the dialogue is a real problem post-2020. We have seen significant declines in retention in both our police force and 911 system. It's because people didn't feel appreciated. They felt like any minor mistake gets conflated. And so it is essential that you have a mayor that is supportive of law enforcement, that law enforcement believes in. Highlights, we are doing a much better job of recruiting. Our classes are getting more diverse. They're coming more from the Portland metro area, but the retention side needs to be a part of our challenge. We need a police accountability system that they feel is fair. Thank you.
Commissioner Rubio.
So I agree. We need a mayor that knows how to work with law enforcement and all of our public safety system, and also a mayor that knows how to bridge the divide between community and rebuild trust between law enforcement and the community. I strongly believe in bringing back the tenets of community policing into Portland. It's something that we need, and it doesn't mean over-policing. It means more presence. It means more relationships, because there are plenty of studies and experience here in Portland that have taught us that when people feel connected, activation goes up and safety goes up and feelings of well-being and community goes up. We need to bring that back. We also are right now hiring more, as the commissioner said. We are hiring more young officers that look like the Portland of today and have Portland values. So we are going in the right direction, but we simultaneously are facing a retirement cliff. So as we hire more officers, which is a very rigorous process, we are still losing some officers.
Thank you,
so we gotta
Commissioner.
keep going.
Mr. Wilson.
So we have a DOJ excessive force injunction on us. Come work for the best force in the United States. Oh, and by the way, if you're going to be a Portland police officer, you're going to arrest the same people over and over again, because 50% of all arrests are of the unsheltered. And oh, by the way, you're going to work extremely hard, because at $25 million, the overtime is the worst we've experienced in Portland. And you're going to feel unsafe, and you're going to be tired, and we're going to make sure that you can't make a split decision, yet you're going to be heavily armed. Everything is against our Portland police officers. We have to right that ship and get back to high standards. At the company I own and operate, we have the lowest workforce injury rate in the state of Oregon. It's not because we take shortcuts, because we care for every one of our staff members the same way I'll do as mayor, to make sure that they go home every day and they get up rested and ready, and they're fully trained and ready to help us in our day-to-day operations of keeping the city safe.
Thank you. Commissioner Maps.
Being afraid when you're a cop is completely rational. It is a scary and dangerous job. That's why it's important that the folks who serve on your city council, and frankly your next mayor, provides our police officers with the training and tools they need in order to do that job safely. I think it's also important to recognize that we have to hold our police bureau to the highest level of accountability. That's why, since I've been on council, I have been a champion for standing up a police accountability commission. I think I will point out that Renee is, I think, the only member on council who voted against the police accountability commission. Love to talk about that a little bit. I agree with Commissioner Rubio in that we need to bring back community policing, but one of the things you got to recognize is that in order to get a cop out of a car and walking a beat on the street, you need more police officers. That's just a staff-intensive way to go. Currently, we have maybe 795 police officers. In order to get people out on the street, we need about 1,200.
Commissioner Gonzalez, I want to give you 30 seconds to respond to that.
I need to check on which version of PAC, to be honest with you. I'd probably take more exception with the constant statement on 50% being houseless That implies that you put someone in a home, that they stop being a criminal. It's a number that I understand folks in law enforcement have warned Mr. Wilson against using because it highly misconstrues the reality. Putting someone in shelter or housing doesn't suddenly make them stop doing crimes. And to make it all about one silver bullet of congregate shelter greatly understates the complexity of the issue.
Mr. Wilson.
As a response, 50% of our unsheltered represent the arrest rate. Those living in shelter, simple, basic nighttime shelter, represent 2% of the arrest rate. You can lower your arrest rate from 50% to 2%. And what this allows us to do is create community safety. It's pretty basic. If you provide safety and security at night, they're not going to be out robbing and in harm's way and going through behavioral health issues. Yes, but keep in mind, our homeless population as a whole is just 1%. Okay, it's 2%, but it at least represents the population more closely than if it were 50% of the arrests. We're overwhelming our police, arresting the wrong people over and over. Provide basic nighttime shelter. Lower the arrest rate almost by 96%.
Thank you.
Correlation is not causation, and that's the misapplication of stats. He does it over and over again. The same thing with his quotes about $300 million in homeless cost. That's a misconstruction of the stats. And so, again, you have to solve for the underlying issues that lead to criminal behavior. Shelter is but one component.
So statements are fine and good. Go to shelterportland.org. We've got a research site. You'll see the citations with the information I'm providing. I won't provide you statements. I'll provide you citations where you can find the information yourself. Believe the experts. You don't have to trust me. I've got the research for you. Please just go and look it up. It's clear. It's concise. We need to turn Portland around.
Thank you. Now I want to go to Ms. Ostis. The initial question that was asked about staffing.
Staffing of police, yes, I agree with several things that were said here tonight. Everyone deserves to feel safe. Let's start there. Police officers deserve to feel safe, but frequently in my experience in Portland, I have not felt safe in the presence of police officers. I have lived 28 years here. I've seen that culture change, and I credit CopWatch and our citizens for holding our police accountable. That's a critical function of a healthy public safety arrangement. We need more policing out in our communities, but we need to make sure that our citizens feel safe when the police are called. Local recruitment and retainment, super important. And the three ride-alongs, the three cops that I have had interviews with, each of them loves their job. They do not feel unsafe. They are so grateful to serve. So if we can have a different narrative in Portland where Portlanders understand that these people truly are there to keep them safe and that they trust that, rebuilding that trust is critical. Thank you.
Thank you. So for my next question, I'm starting with Commissioner Rubio. Do you believe that the mayor of Portland or city council should weigh in on the conflict in the Middle East? And if so, how?
I don't think that that city council is probably the venue because we don't typically. But I do feel like any elected official can use the bully pulpit of their own office or be vocal in their own accord, or offices can get together and do a letter or something like that. We've made similar statements on things around the abortion ban that happened in Texas, but I think that it's really a personal decision of the leader.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
First of all, we have to acknowledge just the tragedy in the Middle East. I was just talking to Bob a few minutes ago. It just breaks our heart, the suffering that's going on. Certainly, October 7th was horrendous, and then the suffering that's followed is equally horrendous. So should the city council, should the mayor declare and ask for a ceasefire? I think it's the decent thing to do. It's the courteous thing to do. But as mayor, I think one of the most important things I have to do is to make sure that the Jewish community, the Palestinian community, the Muslim community are all welcome, they feel safe, and we do everything we can to create a conversation where we lift up Portland and we try and be that example for others.
Thank you. Commissioner Mapps.
Can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. Do you believe that the mayor of Portland or city council should weigh in on the conflict in the Middle East?
I do not. Frankly, the city council and the mayor have certain responsibilities. Foreign policy is made at the federal level, and I very much think that we should look to our federal leaders, both the president and Congress, to shape our policy there. You know, personally, I very much have been talking about my desire to see a ceasefire, an exchange of hostages, aid moving in, and whatnot. But as your mayor and as your member of city council, I have focused on a laser beam on the core issues that face our city: public safety, homelessness, and economic recovery. And when I am your mayor, I will retain that focus on the core issues that shape your life in the city every day.
Thank you. Ms. Ostis?
I am looking for moral leadership first and foremost. I think it would be imminently moral for any leader to say it is time to lay down all of our arms. It's time to lay down the arms on 122nd Avenue. It's time to lay down the arms in Palestine and Israel. And it's time to use those arms for hugging, honestly, like the X song says. I believe that leaders can and should do that. But also while listening to people in agony, our Jewish community in agony, our Palestinian friends in agony. That is also the role of the mayor, to hear those voices, to center those, and when the voices of opposition rise in our streets, to quell them and say, hold space for listening. The peaceable way is the only way forward. I'm looking for that in a leader.
Thank you. Commissioner Gonzalez?
Absolutely not. Our local government needs to be focused on local citizens, our pains, our opportunities, our struggles, our hope, and our faith. I want a city that is safe, beautiful, and healthy again, and once it can be. At the same time, the tragedy in the Middle East is real, but it has been with us thousands of years. I don't believe anyone who can promise a simple path to peace in the Middle East any more than I believe someone who with a simple path to solving homelessness in Portland. Let's be realistic about what impact we can have as Portland citizens, as your Portland leaders. And let's stay focused on the local. Thank you.
Thank you. So for my next question, I want to go into the protests at Portland State University. In light of the events of October 7th and after, students in Portland State University have spoken about their fears about being on campus after some students were promoting Israeli erasure. How would you use your platform to speak to the issue of safety for students on campus?
In particular, the students, let's just make sure we recognize protest is in our DNA for the United States. We have to wrap our hands around it and arms around it, make sure that it's something that's sacred, always is. So long as the protest is legal, permitted, and it's staying safe, we have to support that. But when we veer into vandalism or violence and we start using the streets as an octagon or a coliseum, we have to stop that, and we have to protect our citizens. We have to protect our city. So there's definitely two paths there. Peaceful protests, we have to absolutely enshrine. Violence and vandalism, we have to address that very clearly.
Thank you. Commissioner Mapps?
Can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. So students at Portland State University have spoken about their fears being on campus after other students were promoting Israeli erasure during the protests. How would you use your platform to speak up about
Sure. Well, as your next mayor, one of my responsibilities is to make sure that every Portlander feels safe. I'll also point out that the PSU has its own law enforcement agency, so we need to have some collaboration there. But I got two responsibilities here. One is to make sure everyone is safe. The other is to protect your free speech responsibilities or your free speech rights. I will lean into that as a mayor. One of the other things that I will really do is, frankly, Portland State is one of our most important tenants downtown. So I will be working with the president of Portland State and community leaders there to help integrate them into the city, to make sure that their security concerns are met, just as their transportation needs are met, and their livability needs are met too.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ms. Ostis?
Thank you. Like Keith said, protest is a fundamental right. It's a critical aspect of our democracy in the United States. That said, I would ask that protesters in Portland have clear goals so that they and we know when people diverge from those goals. We don't want our small businesses to be laid to waste by violent protests. That upsets families, it upsets Portland economy. As a moral leader, I would lead by example. I am always yearning for different types of protests. After 9/11, I just yearned, I lived in New York at the time, I yearned for us to take all that money, all of that manpower, and go over there, build schools, build infrastructure. What if we built instead of tore down? What could that be a model for protesters in Portland as they came? Can we get them to come to the table instead of break windows in our streets?
Thank you. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Anti-Semitism in academic settings is a sad legacy of our current reality. We've seen it way too much, acquiescence and tolerance of it, and it needs to be confronted. That's partially the responsibility of our academic community that speaks so highly of tolerance for different ideas, to respect different religious perspectives on their campuses. And that's something they need to address as their own academic community. We do have a unique relationship with Portland State. There's overlapping public safety components, but yet they have their own police force. So it's an area that we have to navigate with each of our university partners. We have to respect their own space and help them when they ask for help. And eventually at Portland State, they did ask for help on the riots. Do want to reiterate, while folks are entitled to First Amendment rights, they're not entitled to take away the expectation and feeling of safety of others and basic respect for their fellow students.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rubio.
I too agree that anti-Semitism, racism, xenophobia, any form of discrimination there should be a no tolerance for that. I also believe that in the right of our community to protest peacefully, and students' right to also voice their opinions, because this is a democracy. But when it creates unsafety or it crosses a line into violence or danger, we need to be clear that there are consequences and follow the law. Part of the work of the mayor is also to direct the police chief to do work at the front end, to have those relationships with education leaders, to ensure that we partner with organizations so that people have an awareness of their rights and their responsibilities of living together in this community. We all have to hold ourselves accountable.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubio. So for my next question, I will start with Commissioner Max. The local Jewish community has been seeing a rise in hate for years, but especially since October 7th of last year. In Portland, Jewish groups spend over $1 million in safety and security in just 1 year. How will you use your platform to speak out against anti-Semitism?
This is an important issue, and frankly, anti-Semitism and racism are close cousins, and every Portland leader has a responsibility to stand up and stand against anti-Semitism. One of the things I will certainly be doing is reaching out to our leaders in the Jewish community to hear their concerns, hear their needs, and collaborate on how we can help keep members of their community safe. Frankly, one of the sad responsibilities of being a member of council over the past 4 years is doing just that. Since I've been here, I've seen graffiti. I've seen graffiti sprayed on synagogues. I've seen, perhaps instances of arson. I've certainly seen many instances of hate. I have tried to reach out and to the folks who are impacted there to see how we could help, express my outrage, and also express my condemnation of anti-Semitism publicly. One of the things that we have to state clearly in the city of Portland that this is not acceptable.
Ms. Ostis.
Yeah, this behavior cannot be tolerated at all, and I would vocally express my despair at any of these actions, and also listen to what the community needs are to prevent that. I'm a preacher's daughter. I saw my dad very active in many interfaith groups, and I think faith leadership can really work through the community fabric to right some of these wrongs, or to really get the message out in different communities. But the mayor cannot and must not stand for any kind of hate speech or hate actions like you've seen, apparently, tragically. Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Gonzalez.
I think occasionally going to temple is just as important as occasionally going to church, visiting our various communities on their ground, their spiritual level. Brother Hennessy welcomed my family here, and my mother has deep ties to the Portland Jewish community at the old Catlin and Gable School, and at one point thought about converting from her Unitarian Presbyterianism to Judaism in her youth. So part of it's just being real and connecting with people at the spiritual level, recognizing our shared intellectual and cultural and really spiritual heritages and embracing those pieces. I do want to acknowledge the point that Commissioner Mapps made. I think it's fair to call out now and condemn some of the racism that he's faced during his mayoral campaign from across this country. They are tied in many respects, and on behalf of anyone involved, I apologize to you, Commissioner Mapps, for anything you faced.
Commissioner Gonzalez. Commissioner Rubio.
I agree with a lot of what's said. We have to stand up and condemn all forms of anti-Semitism, racism, xenophobia, all the things. And we need to be vocal about it. We have sometimes not taken that stand, and we need a mayor. We need leadership that is going to do that, and very publicly and vocally. And to borrow words from Lee, we need that moral leadership on display during key pivotal moments in our city. I also want to applaud the work of the Jewish Federation. When I worked at Latino Network, they were very intentional about seeking out culturally specific organizations to break bread together, to build community together over a series of even a year. And those critical person-to-person relationships is how we build community and how we learn about each other. And those are the kinds of things that we need to do everywhere. And I applaud the interfaith groups who are already doing that now organically. And it would be great. Wouldn't it be great if our city council was behind
Commissioner.
that too?
Mr. Wilson.
I look forward to working and sitting with the Jewish community to learn more, and it's that adage, nothing about us without us, and I share the same focus with all the fellow candidates. But I want to talk about this tactically. 10 years ago, when you called for a police officer for a priority 1 call, they showed up in 6 minutes. Today, they show up in 24 minutes. What our Jewish community is dealing with, it's what all of us in our community are dealing with. We have a police force that's just overwhelmed, and we talked about that earlier. So we have to address that by restoring the confidence of public safety and reducing the burden on our law enforcement officers so we can get back to community policing so the Jewish community and many of our community members don't have to spend $1 million to provide protection and security that we used to enjoy in Portland as just a right of being a Portlander. We have to right-size our city and care for citizens and trust the police that they're going to be there. We have to hire the officers that we have authorized. And then we have to not overwork them with areas and or unsheltered homelessness or the other crime issues that we're dealing with.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. This next question, we will begin with you, Ms. Ostis. Members of the Jewish community have been telling us that anti-Semitism often feels pervasive, but also that it appears invisible to others. In what ways have you seen or heard about anti-Semitism in our community?
Thank you for the question. I've read some of the heartbreaking news stories of the last year. I mean, the last year's been very difficult for all of us who support loved ones who are Jewish. Most of my Jewish friends are back east in Massachusetts, where I went to college, but I've been following all of their articles. A lot of their daughters are at college right now and seeing the really very challenging times, how hard it is to be at college right now. That's as much as I have been able to listen to right now, is just reaching out to my beloved Jewish friends back in Massachusetts. And I would welcome hearing from more people here in these interfaith groups. I do love to go to the Presbyterian church, what is it, Trinity, and I know they do a lot of outreach with the synagogue up there. So I will look forward to doing that more in the next months.
Thank you. Commissioner Gonzalez.
There's almost too much to say in 1 minute on this subject. October 7th, Portland State, the subtle racism and anti-Semitism in passively aggressive Portland that goes back generations. None of this is new. It's been with our community for a long time, but there's also a part that we should emphasize that there's been wonderful connections between the Jewish community and Christian communities in our city. There's been wonderful connections between the Jewish community and the Black community. I've been to some of those celebrations of the two communities together. So I don't know if there's a short answer to that long history of anti-Semitism and all of its manifestations here. But I do want to call out the unifying pieces of of different communities that have suffered in their own ways and still finding spiritual connection in this city for a long time. And I think we need to talk about that too.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubio.
So I have been aware of anti-Semitism and really experienced our history as a city with it when I was first a staffer for Mayor Potter. One of my tasks or my jobs was to create and lay the foundation for the newest iteration of our what is our Office of Equity today. And what that did, it was such a gift because I was able to go into the city archives and I looked and dug deep. And the very first Office of Civil Rights was like in the mid to late 60s, and it was started by members of the Jewish community, and one Jewish man in particular, because of all the anti-Semitism. And so we have a lot of documentation of some of the terrible things that were happening, not just to the Jewish community, but also to the Black community at that time. And they were actually building strong work together and strong alliances. So this has been a pervasive problem, as everyone has said, but we have a rich history of collaborating together and building community. And so seeing that really inspired me about what's possible.
Commissioner. Mr. Wilson.
So specific examples, we heard that this past year in some of the rhetoric that we heard, just sadness. But let's talk about just Portland's most recent history. In 2020, Captain Kruger retired from the Portland Police Force. He was the gentleman who created the shrine on Mount Tabor to Nazi officers. We allowed this officer to stay on force, and we knew about the behavior well before then. Sadly to say, this is not something that was 20 or 30 years ago. This was 4 years ago. Our next mayor has to have extremely high standards for this. We have to show ourselves, and we have to show the way, and we have to make sure that our police force are maintaining that high standards. And then if that occurs in our community, we have to focus on restorative justice. Those individuals have to be brought forward to the communities that they're affecting so we can start moving our community forward by communicating and explaining the harm that's being provided to those individuals who are actually being harmed. But I just want everybody to know this is more recent than we would like to talk about.
Commissioner Mapps.
The question is, how do I learn about the experience of our Jewish neighbors, especially the discrimination that they face? I will tell you, I have two lines of information. One is just my friend group. Some of my closest people in my life are Jewish and active in their synagogues. I hear about what is being talked about in synagogue, and frankly, the stories that come out of those spaces or being shared in those spaces are truly terrifying. I've heard of graffiti, vandalism, arson. The other flow of information that I get about the experience of our Jewish neighbors, frankly, comes from my role of overseeing and managing public safety issues here in the city of Portland. And I will tell you, I think the average Portlander doesn't realize the degree to which, especially our Jewish institutions, have been under attack in recent years. There has truly been vandalism, arson, threats. We've had...
Thank you, Commissioner. At this time, I do want to check in with Pastor Hennessy on any of the questions we may have received from the audience. You're welcome.
I'm transcribing questions so that are focused on what you all are running. There was, what is, this way I'm question, all right with it. DPSST is a certifying organization that all police and security personnel must go through before they actually are a police officer. That is 16 weeks before they become a police officer. The question is, are they teaching community policing? Have they ever, is it an important initiative? So it's one question if I can. Put it this way, is it important to you as those who are running for mayor that the DPSST certifying organization focuses on community policing and trains officers in that.
So shall we restart the queue back with Commissioner Gonzalez?
Well, I think it's essential when we talk about community policing, we're precise on what we mean and look at not just the training, but how you operationalize it. We used to have Business Watch in the city of Portland. We used to have Neighborhood Watch. These were important community programs. We're deeply tied to our public safety teams, including Portland Police. I think it's an important part of the story here is bringing back those teams on the citizen side. Yes, I'm supportive of community policing curriculum in the program, but the biggest challenges right now for community policing is a staffing one. At 800, many of our neighborhood precinct level outreach staffing has really decimated in recent years. So as we build out a police force, I think we can help make that more of a reality. Thank you.
Commissioner Rubio.
So definitely, yes, I would support DPSST doing what it needs to do to ensure that we have training consistent with, more in line with some of what I know that Portland does on its own in its own training, and make sure that those are reinforcing measures. What's happening now is that they're not consistent, and we need to make sure that there's a consistency and it's reinforced. And I would like to see the ability for people to go back for more learning years later for refreshers. And I also know that at one point in time, there was a number of community leaders and folks like Mr. Richard Brown, who has a long history of actually going to DPSST and being part of the training. I would love to see that come back, and not just as a community volunteer, but as an integral part of the program and training.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Wilson.
So to add additional training for community policing, the answer would be absolutely yes. In addition to that, we need to be more culturally specific as well, instead of being a mono society, really focusing on those cultures that we're really talking about so we can address anti-Semitism, also racism and such. But I think we need to be more intentional with that training as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Mapps.
Great question. Yes, I do believe that DPSST should teach community policing. I will also tell you, Commissioner Gonzalez is correct. In order to actually get cops out of their cars and onto the streets, walking the beats, doing community policing, you have to increase the number of cops that you have, because it's just a labor-intensive activity. I will also share this with you. One of the things I'm proudest of, and frankly, it has largely been lost to history, but during my time in council, from the first day I was there, I was pushing the governor to increase staffing levels and throughput at DPSST so that we can bring on more police officers. The governor's office actually increased the capacity there, which frankly is eliminated one of the core bottlenecks that prevented Portland from increasing our police bureau, and frankly get to the point where we can do community policing again.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ms. Ossis.
I think community policing is absolutely the model we should use going forward. The few public safety officers I've spoken with, many of them have a strong dislike of Portland and the culture of Portland. They live outside of Portland. If we can hire people who understand Portland, who are connected to Portland, who are connected to our communities, I think we'll see much better relationships between our citizens and our public safety servants. I loved what Commissioner Rubio said. That was a real actionable item, to have somebody like Richard Brown, not as a volunteer, but actually participate in training. We have these leaders. We could pay them to really share their knowledge to make our public safety servants better, and the relationships between us and those servants better. Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to check in with you, Pastor Hennessy. It is almost 7:30, and so I'm happy to continue asking questions, but for the audience who might be getting tired, shall we make the response 30 seconds? Okay, awesome. So there was one other question you had mentioned to me. If each of you could just tell us, and I'll start with Commissioner Rubio, and Pastor Hennessy, you'll let me know if this is the last question? Okay. So Commissioner Rubio, what is the status of community policing today in Portland?
So it's mixed. I think we've already heard from my colleagues. It is dependent on having the actual capacity and workforce so that we can do that. And the truth is, we still have more officers to hire and vacancies to hire for, and we're bringing on, new officers at a fast clip. But it still takes about a year plus for young officers to learn the system and then be able to be out on their own. So we have work to do to build up our capacity. Sorry.
Mr. Wilson.
I'm not sure exactly, Thunby, but I can only assume with the amount of overtime that our officers are experiencing, they're going from point A to point B, just chasing every priority call. And when we know that we put in for a property crime report and we call for an officer and the response time is 90 minutes, if they show up at all, I would think that the community policing is going to be null and void.
Thank you. Commissioner Maps.
We're doing an inconsistent job of community policing. Most of the time it doesn't happen because we don't have enough cops on the ground to actually do it. When we are able to do it, basically the way it happens is council finds a pot of money that we use for overtime. So basically people volunteer to go out and walk our neighborhoods. We use that, frankly, during the summers and during hotspot times of years in order to get that to happen. But in order to do that consistently, we have to get closer to, I think, about 1,000 cops as opposed to the 800 or so we got today.
Thank you. Ms. Ostis.
Thank you. Yeah, for us to attract really great public safety servants, we need to make sure that that job is actually pretty good. And right now, our cops are very overworked, and we have a retainment problem because there's so much very expensive overtime, and it's difficult to maintain your family life, your quality of life when you are working constantly. So we need to hire correctly, and ideally hire from Portland. Also, I'm understanding that the recruitment process is quite challenging. 1,500 people apply and only 500. Thank you.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
I think the status of community policing is quite sad in the city of Portland. Again, it's attributable to staffing gaps. I will say Chief Day is deeply committed to reinvigorating it. He wants a more assertive and accessible police department. And we do it in targeted ways at times when we can find the dollars, as Commissioner Maps alluded to. But I think our whole community would like it to be more comprehensive, more consistent in the neighborhoods day in and day out. And it's going to be a product of policing. Police staffing. Thanks.
Thank you. At this time, I do want to give everybody an opportunity to give a brief closing. It'll be 30 seconds, and we'll start with Commissioner Maps. And also, if you guys did not get a chance to ask a question, I understand that the candidates might be lingering around for a little bit, so please feel free and approach them. But now for your closing, Commissioner Maps.
Well, I want to thank all of you for being here today. You hear it all the time. This is literally one of the most important elections that Portland has seen in 100 years. I want to thank my colleagues for the dialogue. I think at this point, a lot of you know me pretty well. I'm deeply committed to making the city safer, housing people over the next 4 years. I think that we can eliminate homelessness, or at least street camping, within 4 years, and I'll do that if I'm your mayor. And I think we can also revitalize our economy, especially our economy downtown and into the business districts. If you vote me number one, I think we can get that done.
Thank you, Commissioner Maps. Ms. Ostis.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. It is one of the great honors of my life to run for office amongst this fine crew. I am looking for deeply moral leadership going forward. This new mayor system, we can have a different type of leader. We can have a visionary, somebody who reflects the very best parts of Portland and, yes, attends to our challenges, but ultimately reflects the best in your communities, the best in your neighborhoods, and weaves us all back together. That's the important work of our time. Thank you.
Ms. Ostis. Commissioner Gonzalez.
I'm running to continue the work I've done on City Council as a standard bearer for safety and livability. I'm committed to a city that is safe, healthy, and beautiful, a city that is welcoming to all those that can adhere to the social contract, and a place where families can grow and elders can age in place. And I look forward to leading your city in the next 100 years of our new form of government. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Rubio.
So I'm running for one reason. I absolutely love this city, and I truly care about making this a city finally for all of us. And I don't have to tell you, we have serious work to do to turn our city around, but that's why we need a mayor who has our values, who will meet the urgency of the moment and get things done.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Thunby. Thank you, Pastor Hennessy. And thank you, Mrs. Hennessy. Holy cow, she was good. I'm running for mayor to really focus on the vision that we are the most livable city in America. We once were 10 years ago. We have all the resources. We have the right people. This is the right time, and I hope you join me in that vision that I foresee for next year. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And can we just get Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you held up. Okay, all good. You've been doing amazing. Commissioner Rubio, we owe you 15 seconds.
That's okay, but I appreciate that. I guess I will just say that, we have the ability to come together and really lean into our values and make this the city that we love and get it on track again through love and heart and collaboration.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Rubio. And can we get a round of applause for our timekeeper? That was... Thank you so much.
Can we? Do I have it? I do. Do I have it? I need to go over here. Okay. First of all, let's give Ms. Tunvi a wonderful round of applause for the great job she did. And if you would, also give the same to these wonderful candidates who are running for office. She got taken care of. Okay, very good. And then we want to thank each of you for making it your business to be here tonight. Was this worth your time tonight? So there are questions in the audience as well, and I just want you to know that, again, on behalf of the Jewish Federation, on behalf of Imagine Black, the Coalition of Black Men, the NAACP, we are grateful tonight, and certainly the Vancouver Avenue First Baptist Church, we're grateful to have you here tonight. Help me thank the staff. This doesn't get done by one person. Thank you. All of you, I appreciate you very, very much. There was one question that I think Bob Hornstein is probably more equipped to answer. The question says, can you distinguish between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism? And if you don't mind, Keith, giving him your... That's really putting him on the spot, isn't it? Yeah.
How much time do we have? Well, I mean, this is how I define Zionism. Zionism.
If you'll stand, Bob.
Let me stand. So the way that I define Zionism, which I believe is the original idea behind it, is the right of the Jewish people to national self-determination in at least a part of our ancestral homeland, which is the land of Israel. That does not negate the right of the Palestinian people to national self-determination in the same homeland. So that's how I say it. Anti-Semitism is directed at Jews from the far right, the far left. This is a whole discussion. We do a lot of presentations on anti-Semitism so people understand exactly what it is, how it's being normalized, how it's evolved, and we get into misconceptions about Jewish identity as well. I appreciated the question about why it's so difficult for some to understand that anti-Semitism is a growing problem because they don't see Jews necessarily as a minority because we're sort of pigeonholed into this box where we're a white religious community. So if you want to know more, I'm happy to speak to any groups or organizations. That's what we've been doing now for the last really 3 years. A lot of our time is spent on educating around anti-Semitism.
Very good. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So there will be those who have questions, but that's okay. It's very important that before you go, we could not answer all the questions. So you will have the opportunity to speak to all of these wonderful people as we get ready to leave today, and I'm grateful that they're willing to hang around. They were just telling me this is their last session like this until, what, something going on next week or the week after? Is that right? This is it. So we're really, no, the election. So here, where are our registered voters? All right, I don't think I see a hand that's down. What is our job? I didn't hear you. I didn't hear you. Very good, very good. So we are grateful that you're here. Thank you very much. Let's all stand, if you will. Everybody, tomorrow night at the Christ Memorial Church, they're having a education session around ranked choice voting. And is there something else? It's not a candidate. It's not this group of candidates. It's the district candidates who are running for city council. Is that right? Okay. What time tomorrow night? Christ Memorial Church is right off of Killingsworth and the cross street. It's the gas station. I can't remember. Interstate. There you go. So tomorrow night at what time did you say? Okay. But tomorrow evening that's going to happen. If you're glad that you came tonight, let's hear a big round of applause for everybody. So our candidates, again, we love you and thank all of you. So come up and chat with them for a little bit. You're welcome to. And a little bit afterwards, we'll start messing with the lights so you know it's time to go home.
Hey, Renee, Keith, Commissioner Rubio, can we take a family photo? I think this might be the last time all of us get together.